You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Nicole Kargin. She's the founder of ResearchDoc AI. We're going to talk about how to determine whether published research is methodologically sound and likely to be true. And I guess, you would never suspect that there's scientific papers, I'm sure, being written by AI and all kinds of garbage that gets into the peer review system and somehow makes it through. So this should be very interesting. So welcome, Nicole.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rich. So ResearchDoc AI is basically the credit score, but for scientific research. So the same way that a credit score helps you figure out how to trust someone financially, I am helping you decide who to trust in the academic sphere.
Well, why is this important to you? What's your background that made you think about this?
So I am actually I'm not even in med school yet. I'm not a PhD by any means. I am a sophomore in my undergrad. I was lucky to be in a program at Yale that had me reading a lot of these research articles. So I wrote a couple of literature reviews for them. And for each of these projects, I was reading about 200 articles. And what I found was I had no idea which articles to trust. I mean, I thought that it was simply because maybe I was 16 and maybe if I was older, I would understand them more. But no, it's really that I think nowadays, if we see that something is published in a peer-reviewed journal, we think that's kind of good enough for it to on the trust scale. And obviously we do have citation metrics, but it's a little ironic to trust a paper in your own research just because other people have also thought that other people used it.
Oh, okay. So if a paper was cited a whole bunch of time, the default right now is, okay, it wouldn't have gotten so many citations if there was something wrong with it, so I'll cite it too.
Yeah. And of course that is a great metric for, what we have right now. It's probably the best that we have out there, but one of the best. But if we do have these experts who have actually taken the time to replicate these studies, then that is how we figure out currently whether or not we can trust an article. But yeah, there's no objective scale right now, and that's what I'm trying to do with ResearchDoc AI.
I don't know if you can get an objective scale. I know some people that publish papers, and they said they'll be on a peer review board for someone will be on it for them. Sometimes you get rejections, you don't know who is looking at the paper, and someone's got it out for you. Sometimes they just let it through, no problem. So how do you deal with that when the peer review process itself is corrupted?
Exactly. That's kind of why, that's also part of why I'm starting ResearchDoc AI, because I think, as you were saying, peer review, if someone happens to either just recognize your name and have a personal, vendetta or just bad opinion that gets your paper rejected, it's not because of the actual research quality itself. And I think especially in the field of science, which is supposed to be a field that is based on the hardcore facts that we get through trial and error in the lab, we really need to be making these metrics objective and not completely subjective based on our own personal lives.
Well, there's the pressure to publish, the pressure to be right, all that stuff. Why was it counteracted? Why could it be counteracted before and now it seems to be a problem that we're losing ground to?
Are you saying why now we can solve this problem, or?
Yeah, why are we able to solve it now? And there's so many incentives not to be honest. How are we supposed to do it? How are you supposed to do it?
Yeah. So right now, why I'm figuring out how to solve this problem is because with AI, we are suddenly able to automate simple processes, and peer review is completely overburdened. Unfortunately, even though as much as we would love to keep peer review completely 100% human, we need to start thinking about whether or not we can handle these volumes. Because, I mean, the amount of papers that are being submitted is just exponentially skyrocketing. And we cannot feasibly keep up with that sheer volume and still continue to take the time to conduct a thorough peer review on each of those papers. So what I'm trying to, the solution that I'm trying to offer, I'm not trying to replace human reviewers with AI. I don't think that we should be doing that. And I mean, there's so many debates on LinkedIn, on X that are talking about this. That is not what I'm trying to do. I am simply trying to automate what an AI is good at. And so
what are some of the factors? Like what's an example of what parts of it could AI do, you think?
So what I'm having AI do is I'm giving it a list of attributes to look for and locate in an article. So, for example, if an article is, so what ResearchDoc AI currently does is it's a web extension that as you're reading your study, you have the browser extension open on the side panel, and it's showing you exactly which details are in the article and which ones are missing. So what AI does really well right now is locating with a certain degree of certainty whether or not these attributes that I ask it to look for, this rubric, those details are or not in the article. So
what's an example of an attribute or two? Yeah.
Yeah. So take like the certainty assessment, for example. Did the article report how uncertain they were about the results? Because maybe the AI finds that the authors included many of the details that they were supposed to, but there's no certainty estimate found in the article. That is potentially that's a red flag that you would want to notice and address, because I mean that it makes you trust it a little less. That makes it more likely to be untrue.
What was the factor that you said that would be suspicious that an AI would catch?
So an uncertainty assessment is what I was referring to. So
like the p-value, or what do you mean?
The p-value would be under like statistical evidence. So that is a different, very, very important attribute that I also look for. But the example that I was using earlier, the uncertainty estimate, reporting how it's like a percentage of confidence, either how confident you are in your findings or how uncertain you are about your results. And I mean, that's something that's an attribute that isn't asked for in every single article type, but it is asked, it should be included in certain types of articles. For example, like systematic reviews, you would want to see that attribute specified.
How is a scientist supposed to know how, the margin of error or the tolerance of their factors or whatever you'd call it, uncertainty?
Yeah, there's some formulas out there for calculating it. I unfortunately don't know it off the top of my head. I should, but as you're conducting your experiments in the lab, you're getting some values. You're getting some measurements that you then compute using the formula, and you can get an uncertainty estimate.
Okay. Do most papers do this, or most papers don't? That
would be fairly common in papers that are about like biomedical research or anything that is an experiment conducted in a laboratory setting. So this would not be the case for something that's not empirically based.
Okay. So, I mean, do a lot of articles put this information in, or is it just assumed or neglected, or like what's the current state?
So I would estimate there's no real studies right now that people have conducted that are saying like this percent of articles is omitting this one detail or like omitting a different detail. That's actually something that I'm trying to push for to be more common in the field of research, looking at all of the research that we have out there and saying like, what are the quality metrics out there right now? That's something that the science community is really lacking right now. So as much as I would love to give you a percent, there isn't enough evidence for me to pull from.
Okay.
Yeah.
What other factors?
Just from gauging it, I would say maybe like 75% of the articles that are supposed to be including it, and I would say that an average score for the percent of details that are included in for now like empirically based articles is probably about like a 65%, which is it's much lower than we would like.
Okay. What other factors cast suspicion on an article? Like, if you see a lot of reciprocal peer review, but does it show the peer reviewers, or like what else?
So I'm not currently looking for the peer reviewers, but that is definitely something that I would want to account for in the future. But just as I'm building out my MVP, I'm not including that yet. You would also want to see, for example, the reporting of biases. That's a big one. And as you were saying earlier, the statistical evidence, so the p-values. And it would be very helpful to see like if that p-value is close to or just below 0.05, because I don't know if you've seen any of those charts that are displaying the distribution of p-values throughout the scientific literature. There is a huge cluster centered just below 0.5. And I mean, statistically, you would want to see a uniform distribution of those p-values below 0.5 and above 0.5 as well, if there was nothing, no other relationship in that data. But no, there's a huge cluster just below. And you would be surprised just how many authors have actually secretly rounded their p-values down. It is something that no one is going to publicly admit, but it is happening way too often.
Why is it a problem if it's a good enough p-value? Or is it not? Is it on the edge where they try to fuzz or fudge it? Or what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, just because the widely accepted value for the p-value threshold is 0.05, usually authors are going to try to aim to go just below that, or like anywhere below that, hopefully much farther below that. But obviously, sometimes it doesn't work out the way that they want. The experiment doesn't go how they were hoping it would. But that hope is sometimes so strong because you are pressured in this current system to publish or perish. You've probably heard the phrase, but yeah, if your experiment that you've been working on as a professor is not working out exactly, it's your p-values are just above. So maybe they're like they have a wider range and they're not quite hitting 0.05, but they're just above it. And your deadline's approaching. What are you going to do? Some people choose to round it down to just below the widely accepted threshold.
Why?
Because
they're
they want to
excused from not having the right data if something goes wrong.
They want to, well, if they need to have a positive research result, something exciting where they're able to reject the null hypothesis. Because if you have a paper that's just inconclusive that says in the end, I was not able to reject the null hypothesis, those more like unexciting papers are way less likely to be published in journals.
Okay. Are there certain areas of science that are more contentious, like biology versus physics or chemistry? Like what kind of topics attract the most of this shenanigans?
Definitely anything empirical. There's not a clear understanding of like if one discipline is like dramatically more likely to have these, as you said, shenanigans occurring, but definitely the disciplines that have like huge pressure for like specific results in the lab. Yeah. So yeah, as you said, like these hands-on disciplines like biology, chemistry, physics.
What about experimentation involving animals? Is there anything special or unique about that where this needs to be applied? Or are there areas that seem to be rife with retractions or problematic papers?
Mm-hmm. So as for the studies about animals, I mean that's those preclinical trials are like definitely one of the biggest article types that we are looking at. Like in the US alone, I believe in 2015, we lost a total of about $28 billion to research that was irreproducible on preclinical research, which is crazy. I mean, $28 billion of research that we just can't build upon for various reasons, whether someone toyed with the data, or maybe someone was just writing the article in a rush for a deadline and they did not have enough time to include enough detail for those articles to be replicated further on. Yeah.
Any point looking at the retractions and looking at their numbers and stuff and seeing if you see any patterns?
Yeah, so retractions are an actually very interesting topic because, I mean, obviously, if an article gets retracted, it's very, as the author, it's a very bad effect on your reputation, but as the journal as well. But because we have we've had this issue in peer review for many years now, it's expected, just because the way the system is set up, that we are not going to catch all of this flawed research that is being published. So my argument on, and I've made this argument a lot on X. I've been met with a lot of commentary, but I do think that retractions need to go up in every discipline of science before they go down, because we have to address this backlog of research that was poorly reviewed just because the system is set up. It's not necessarily, it really isn't the peer reviewers' fault themselves, but we do need to skyrocket retractions and clean up the area right now of what is out there before those retraction rates can then go down. So honestly, I think that retractions going up or down as of right now it's not a definitive metric of like how trustworthy a journal is, just because we know that there's a lot of flawed research out there already. And it is so good if you can recognize that as a journal and be actively trying to fix it. So yeah.
Okay. What about the peer review process itself? Again, it seems to be sometimes there's a peer reviewer on the board that just doesn't want your stuff no matter what it says. Is there a way to look through the feedback from peer reviewers to see what is genuine and what is BS or obfuscation?
Yeah, the peer review process itself it's very much a black box for so many people in this field. Unless if you've peer reviewed yourself, you probably don't really understand it, or unless if you are the journal editor himself. So I actually was able to speak with a journal editor recently, and they kind of showed me the behind the scenes of what it looks like. And it is such an outdated like software where it's so poorly set up, the way that all of the submissions go directly to the editor, who then chooses which experts in the field he would like to ask to volunteer to peer review these articles. So what ends up happening is you have maybe the journal editor sends out 30 invitations for people to peer review an article, and after 6 months, no one has responded. So they send out another 30 invitations, and maybe now you get one person that has accepted the invitation to peer review, and then they take another 6 months to get back to you. But then, so you're waiting those 6 months as the journal editor, and maybe they just completely forgot about it, and maybe they're actually never going to send you that peer review. So it takes way too long.
Why aren't there time limits and requirements?
I know, like I completely agree with you. There should be time limits and requirements for this, but unfortunately, the way that it's
that'll be another flag you could look at is to see like if the average peer review response time is X, and from this reviewer their response time is much higher. I don't know if you could do if it would be proper even to do a rating system on reviewers, so that the ones that have high rating would be chosen more, and the ones with low rating wouldn't be, because of bad behavior or whatever.
But also, that's kind of an incentive against people responding quickly to peer review, because that means that they're going to be assigned more of it. And frankly, no one wants to peer review. You're asking someone with a family and children and who want to get back to their relatives and spend more time with them it's unpaid. You're asking them to volunteer their time for you to get nothing. Frankly, almost nothing in return. Some journals do have it set up so that beside the author name, there's there's a couple of metrics, maybe how many times they've been asked to peer review other articles and how many times they actually sent it in. Yeah. So those two metrics have been used before. And so that's actually going to help your case to be published.
Well, when let's say I have a journal and I say, all right, all our stuff is peer reviewed. Is there a board of peer review that says in order for something to be considered peer reviewed, it has to meet this, certain criteria, or is it just kind of a process like that's loose?
I believe it's a loose process that's really just connected to the journal itself. I mean, many of these journals have higher their top tier is several people as a board who are all editors. You also have like the different tiers of editors, like maybe someone's an assistant editor to the chief editor. Yeah, and some of these journals are owned by much bigger enterprises. Like you have Elsevier is a big one. Yeah, and they own lots of these articles. Wiley, yeah.
Yep. I don't know. It just seems like why not boldly go in there and your algorithm finds like what does someone want in a peer review? Like no one wants someone to take 6 months. Like what else can be done to improve this? What if a peer review has words like absurd, or mockery or whatever? Like a good peer review would be thoughtful and would be adult and not like an attack. And I'm sure some of the peer reviews are like, oh, this is ridiculous, or this is
like
they're inflammatory. Are you looking for that? Would that be a signal that would help say, yeah, sure, it says it's peer reviewed, but obviously the person that did it is like, they just did it to attack the person and not to like honestly gauge their stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be a really good metric to look at. But since that is like private data from the journals, I wouldn't have access to that. But what I am hoping to do, and ResearchDoc AI would do this, is if a journal would sign off on using ResearchDoc AI to augment their peer reviews, the peer reviewer wouldn't.
Why can't you have an exception? Why can't you have, again, if a journal wants to do this, why can't you say to the journal, one of the criteria that's really important is we need to see the text of the responses themselves, because that'll tell us that this person, maybe they just did a cursory job. They're like, oh yeah, it looks great. Your data should be better formed and have a higher p-value. Otherwise, it's wonderful. And it's like essentially it's like a bullshit review instead of a real one. Or again, the person just attacks with no, obviously this is patently wrong or something like that. Why not ask for that so you can get a real assessment?
That would be great. Yeah. The current system is set up so that the peer reviewers themselves, they submit their reviews, and then you have a couple of filters that are gauging like whether or not this is a good enough peer review or not. And you also have multiple people submitting like several peer reviews per article. So you're not just going off of one peer reviewer and what they've said, but also the reviews are first filtered through the associate journal editors. So they go through and look at what each of those peer reviewers said, and then once that data is collected, and then the editor-in-chief also takes a look at it. So there are currently a couple of steps there, just to filter out the like absurd responses that are unprofessional. But yeah, that would be a very interesting metric to look at.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you should call it the white box peer review, and just the requirement is you have to do it in a very different way than they're currently doing it now. You have to disclose a lot more. You have to show the text. The whole point is like just tiny tweaks to the system is not really going to do it. It needs to be a major overhaul. And this is what you found is required. Maybe be bold and be like, you want to really do it right? This is how it should be done right,
Yeah, and honestly, one of the ways to do that I've been thinking about is, I mean, if I'm running this analysis if I run it on like several articles from a particular journal, and I find terrible quality that is hiding behind a very exciting paper title, I could then go to that journal and say, hey, like I could publish what I've found here, but I'm going to give this information to you first so that you can actually proactively fix the problem.
Actually, you know what would be cool? It's an idea that came up. Tell you for what it's worth. What if you use your AI to analyze the paper itself and the contents, and for it to suggest from a bank of scientists on who should do the peer review based on their citations, their work, the similarity of what they do to what the paper's about? Like, why wouldn't you do a matching yourself?
Yeah, that too.
I
That
think
too would
cool.
be a wonderful augmentation to this software. Yeah.
But then you're not just reporting, you're actively saying, like, my match system is going to get a much fairer and much better peer review than, whatever random way they're doing it right now because of these factors. And your model should become the de facto, like the gold standard for it. If you, I don't know, I shouldn't tell you what to do, but just a suggestion, why not be bold? Yeah, why not be bold and make yourself the gold standard for good reason? I mean, you could have AI as also, like, part of the peer review process could be 5 people need to do it that are associated, with the topic and familiar, and 3 AI analyses that will look at it from these other lenses too. And now you've got a hybrid peer review that has more to it, and it's not black box, but the formula is known,
Yeah, that's great, because we do need these, like, if I want to make a change in this scientific publication system, I need to go big, because these small changes are not going to be seen. They're going to be ignored. Everyone is just going to continue with the status quo, the way that we've been doing this for so many years.
Yeah, and some of the big publications, if you approach them once your model's developed and be like, if you guys utilize this and take it on, you're going to be seen as not only one of the top journals, but the most transparent in terms of peer review. And that should put you above other publications because you're disclosing all, how the sausage is made. Other publications are not. Like the Lancet may want it as leverage to be better than, Elsevier or something or whatever, or PNAS wants it or something,
Yeah, this has the power to really boost a journal's reputation, but at the same time, it has the power to completely tank a reputation. Like I could save someone's reputation that has been historically, maybe someone made one mistake and now no one trusts them, but they're desperately trying to get back into the field and they just can't get anything published because of that stain on their reputation. And now if you give it an objective score, you can see, okay, like they've actually learned from their previous mistake, and now they're actually pushing out some of the highest quality research that we have seen.
There's a lot of factors too. Also, the number of retractions an author has. I don't know if there'll be a lot of them with a lot of retractions, but maybe that's a signal. I mean, it's just all kinds of stuff. There's
a bunch of factors that go into like if you want to trust the actual author or not. I mean, maybe that is something that I go next with ResearchDoc AI. Like once I've tackled the trustworthiness of a particular article, maybe I'm looking at the authors themselves.
Well, you know what you might have to do is do your own journal and do this formula, and you publish everything. You put out exactly how the thing works and who is chosen for peer review of each article, and you show that right next to the article and why, and you show the AI's analysis, and like the journal not only publishes someone's paper, but right alongside it, it shows the good and the bad about the article, the evaluation and the score from the peer reviewers, and again, who they are and all that. And your journal, I'm sure some people would want to be in it. It could take on a life of its own and become its own journal. And that may cause other people to adapt what you're doing, or who knows,
Yeah, I would love to do that. I think this also has the power for, Archive, the huge database of these unpublished articles that they're published in, they're essentially just uploaded to this big database, but it's kind of where an article goes before it's been, published in an actual peer-reviewed journal. But you could apply this software to those articles that haven't been published in these peer-reviewed journals, and because I'm sure that there's some real gold in that database. But you want to have something helping you navigate it and finding what is high quality and what is not. And just because it's not published under a name that you recognize doesn't mean it's not of value.
Right. Well, that's really cool. I think it's a great project. Is this going to be your master's thesis, or is it's a project outside of school, or what role is this fitting in your life? Right now it's a project
outside of school. Yeah, I've been working on it for about 9 months now, but I'm hoping to continue it for a long time. Yeah. So hopefully it does become a master's thesis and even further. Yeah, I'd love to talk more about it at like plenty of conferences. I actually yesterday, have you heard of South by Southwest?
Yeah, I'm in Austin, so yeah, I see the traffic for the concerts.
Yeah. I just did the Capital Factory startup crawl last night. It was awesome. Yeah. So I definitely hope to do a lot more of that. Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. Well, I hope this gets really, really big for you. I think it's really important what you're doing. I think it's really great,
Yeah, thank you so much.
How can listeners that want to help or give advice or questions or whatever reach out? What's the best way where should they go?
Yeah, anyone can find me on LinkedIn or X. It's my handle is just my name, Nicole Kargin, NicoleKargin. Yeah.
Okay. Well, very good, Nicole. Thanks so much for coming on, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.